Today's lesson is 4-1 Reteaching. The learning goal for this lesson is to use mental math to divide multiples of 10 and 100 by a one-digit number. The strategy we're going to talk about here is to use basic facts and patterns to help you divide mentally. So the problem we have here is 480 divided by 6. Well, I see a relationship between the numbers 48 and 6. I know that 48 is a multiple of 6, so that it's going to divide in evenly. So let's start by solving that problem. So let's do 48 divided by 6, and this is a problem that should be on your times tables and that you should pretty quickly know is going to be equal to 8. Well, now we've solved 48 divided by 6. Now we need to solve 480 divided by 6. If you look at our original problem, you see that 480 has an extra 0, has 1 0 more than 6 does. So on our final quotient for 480 divided by 6, we're going to put the 8 that we found when doing 48 divided by 6, but we're also going to add that 0 onto the end of our quotient. So our answer here is going to be 80. Now, I always recommend that you check these by looking at the fact families. So we're going to multiply 80 times 6 to see if we get the 480, see if we get the correct answer. So 0 times 6 is 0, and then 6 times 8 is 48. So sure enough, 80 is going to be my final quotient here. So here we have another example, 60,000 divided by 600. Again, I'm looking for a relationship between the non-zero digits in my dividend and divisor. And I see that in both my dividend and my divisor, I have a 6. So we're going to start off by solving that simpler division equation first. So we have 6 divided by 6. And this is probably a fact you learned when you first learned division. 6 divided by 6 is going to equal 1. So now let's take a look at the zeros in our problem. In my dividend, I have 4 zeros, and in my divisors, I have 2 zeros. So one way we could look at this is to look at the number of zeros in our dividend and subtract the numbers of zeros in our divisor. So here we have 4 zeros minus 2 zeros. That means we would have 2 zeros left over. So we could add just 2 zeros to our quotient. Another way you could do this problem is to start it the same way we did on the last one. Just do the 6 divided by 6 equals 1. This is just kind of a different way to look at the zeros. Another way you could do this is to cross them off as you go, as if they're canceling each other out. So if we looked at the 60,000 and we crossed off 1 0 there, then we would go over to the 600 and cross off 1 0 there, back to the 60, and back to the 600. So now you see that I have an equal number of zeros crossed out, like they're canceling out, and I have just 2 zeros left over. Those 2 zeros would be added on to my quotient. So in this case, I would get 100. So now, once again, I want to check and make sure that I have the correct amount of zeros on my problem. So we're going to do 600 times 100 and see if we get 60,000. So let's use our handy-dandy tool of multiplying non-zero digits first. We have 6 times 1 equals 6. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros that we're going to add on to the end. And then we need to place our comma 3 zeros over. So sure enough, I get 60,000 as my product when I check my work here. So I know that I have the correct amount of zeros in my product, or my quotient of 100. Well, those two strategies that we talked about when finding the correct number of zeros in a quotient work very well. I want to warn you that you need to be careful because it might get a little tricky with some basic facts. So let's take a look at this problem here. We have 40,000 divided by 50. So we're going to start off by looking at the relationship between the non-zero digits. So I have 4 and I have 5. Well, I know that 5 can't divide evenly into 4, so we're going to move this over a little bit more. And we're going to see that I have 40 divided by 5, which I know that is going to come out evenly because 40 is a multiple of 5. So when I do this basic fact here, I see that I get 8. Now, let's take a look at the zeros. It's important to remember that this first 0 up here has already been used. So we're just looking at these 3 zeros on the end. So if we were to use the first strategy, we would say, well, I have 3 zeros here minus just 1 0 here, which means I have 2 zeros left over. So if I add those 2 zeros onto the end of my quotient, I would get 800. So let's take a look if we were to do it the second way, the second strategy we talked about. Again, you would have the 40 divided by 5 equals 8. Remember, this first 0 has already been used, so we just need to cross off the zeros at the end. So if we cross off 1 0 over here and 1 0 over here, then I see that I have these 2 zeros left that haven't been used and also haven't been crossed out. So again, I would add 2 zeros to my quotient. Remember, it is always, always, always a good idea to check your work by doing the multiplication problem that is part of the fact family. So let's check our solution by doing 800 times 50 to see if we get 40,000. So let's do 8 times 5, we get 40, and then I have 1, 2, 3 zeros left over that I'm going to add to my product, place my comma, and I see that I got the same answer. So 800 has the correct number of zeros to be the quotient in this problem.